Hey guys, welcome back to Star and Scrub NBA. Whether you're watching this on our YouTube channel or listening to it via podcast, this is going to be a little bit of a review of today's massive matchup between the Golden State Warriors and the Brooklyn Nets at Barclays Center. And for those of you that are listening to the podcast, I will go and have a bit of a look at tomorrow's fixtures, Thursday's slate of games for us in Australia, Wednesday night for those in America, and potentially try and find a few winning tips for tomorrow's games. There are a plethora of matchups on, as I said. So, getting into the Warriors-Nets game, look, I'm a massive Warriors fan, if you don't know that already, and I will try and keep this as non-biased as I can, and also try and take my excitement of the Warriors out of it as much as I can, and try and keep it to an analytical perspective. And there's a few takeaways that I want to discuss, just one in the short term and also two in the long term as we look forward to the playoffs and what could be a potential finals matchup between what probably is right now the best team in each conference. And I think this matchup today was built as that. So who knows? For the first half, it looked like two of the best teams going at it, and then the Warriors obviously drew away in the second half. A 117-99 victory. It was, as I said, it was thrilling basketball to watch in the first half. It was bucket after bucket. I think it was 60-odd to something in the first half. There were buckets galore, each team having 60 points. And then the Warriors, as they have done for the majority of this season, just blew the Nets away in the third quarter. They have a habit of that, and I'll get into some statistics in a minute. But what I saw today was a team that is completely firing on all cylinders and still has a top 5 shooter of all time to come back. And Klay Thompson, that's the other news from a Warriors perspective, is he has begun 5-on-5 scrimmages. So hopefully we can see Klay Thompson, what is it, the 16th of November here in Australia at the moment. Hopefully we can see Klay Thompson in around a month's time. As I said, he started 5-on-5 scrimmages, so really positive signs there. And obviously, from a personal point of view, it's going to be an emotional day when Klay Thompson makes his return, because Klay Thompson is my favourite NBA player of all time, for those that don't know. So I do have a cat called Klay, and I am holding out hope that he stays fit and healthy, not only when he comes back, but also between now and his hopeful return date in around a month or 6 weeks' time kind of thing. But yeah, apart from Klay and Wiseman coming back, this is a team that is firing on all cylinders, and every single player from 1 through 13 at the moment, with Klay and Wiseman out, 1 through 13 knowing their roles and knowing exactly what they need to do on the floor, knowing exactly where they need to be offensively, knowing exactly where they need to be defensively, and just following a system of Steve Kerr to a T, basically. And on the other side of things, we've got the Brooklyn Nets, who are still trying to find their way, obviously with no Kyrie Irving, James Harden trying to adapt to the new rule changes that we've seen so far this season. A little side point. In fact, it's not a side point, it's a big point out of today's game, the amount of fouling that occurred. And I was sick of it watching, and from a James Harden perspective, look, I just don't like watching James Harden play. And what I saw today was nothing different to what I've seen in the last few years, or in majority of his career, especially since he got to Houston, where it's just foul baiting. It's getting into the lane and then swiping through the defender's arms, basically trying to draw a foul call. And it's just, I get it's a great way to manipulate the rules. And this season it's been done to less effect, but it's just not good to watch. I'm not saying it's not an effective way to play, and it's not a winning way to play, because James Harden has had a very successful career. He won an MVP out of playing the way that he does, but it's not an enjoyable game to watch. And there's just too much fouling today on both sides of the floor. I mean, the Warriors, it nearly derailed them. And yes, there's a lot of fouls that were there. I mean, Steph Curry had 4 fouls within 2.5 quarters, and the fourth one where he tried to get a steal off Blake Griffin, and it was literally a 5% chance of happening, and it basically risked him getting a 4th foul, and he still went for it and did pick up that 4th foul. That was just stupid from Steph. In an otherwise amazing game where he had 37 points and 9 3-pointers from 14 attempts, that was a stupid play. So there's a lot of fouls there that are just genuine calls that should have been made, bad defensive technique from both teams' point of view, but from the Warriors' point of view on specific ones as well. But there are other ones where you just shake your head and you're just like, this is not what we want to see in NBA basketball, and it's what the refs and the NBA have done a good job of trying to eliminate so far this season, because this was kind of a throwback to the previous years of basketball where we just got foul after foul. And the other thing is it just takes the best players off the floor. You know, Steph has to sit halfway through the third quarter. Jordan Poole was in foul trouble. Andrew Wiggins was in foul trouble early in the third quarter. Harden himself had 3 fouls in the first half. So it's just disappointing. I know you've got to call what's there and what is a foul. And oftentimes, you know, they are correct calls. But then there's other ones where you just like, don't fall for the James Harden foul baiting. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I'm not a huge fan of watching his game. And I will on another point just say, there's too many times where if I'm Kevin Durant, I'm watching the way the Warriors are playing and I'm kind of missing being in that offense, that free-flowing ball movement offense, when on the other side of the floor, now I know he didn't choose to play with James Harden straight away, obviously paired up with Kyrie Irving, but they made the trade for James Harden. There's too many times today where I'm watching Harden just dribble the air out of the ball for 20 seconds. And you've got KD next to you, and it's just like, it's just hard to watch from a fan's point of view, and I'm sure it's hard to watch from a Nets teammate perspective as well. Watching, yes, he's a star player, and yes, we know he's one of the best ISO players in the league, but move the ball on, mate. Move the ball on. Try and ingratiate a bit more of the Warriors' ideals of, you know, ball movement and free-flowing passing and whatnot. And I just thought too many times today, James Harden's trying to dribble the air out of the ball. Maybe there's a directive there from Steve Nash that, hey, you've been struggling a little bit, mate. Get yourself going a little bit, and whether that, you know, takes a few isolation plays, then maybe that's what they're going for. But geez, if I'm Kevin Durant, I'm kind of watching the way the Warriors played and looking at James Harden on the other side of things and thinking, did I make the right decision here? Is basically what I'm saying. And I'm sure at the end of the day, he'd be disappointed in the fact that he left Golden State and left Steph Curry to try and get his own team in his own building and try and get his own successes without it being Steph Curry's team. And I mean, the Warriors went in there today and Steph Curry was getting MVP chance, and there were cheers when Steph Curry was making shots, and KD can't get away from it. And it's difficult. It'd have to be difficult for him, I guess, to see Steph Curry and the Warriors come into his building and have that reception that they did. But more onto the game and more onto the systems that we're seeing. And I think the Warriors are the best team in basketball right now. And some people might turn this off straight away and think, oh my God, he's talking out of his backside. He's clearly a Warriors fan and telling me to shut the F up. Just hear me out for a second. So the Warriors have the best combination right now of the coaching system and the system they play basketball combined with the talent. And there's some teams out there that have a great system, but they don't have the talent to be able to execute the system, therefore they're not a great team. And there's other teams that have the talent, they just don't have the coaching system to be able to put into place and make those talented players as effective as they can be. And the Warriors have the best combination right now of talent and the system. And as I spoke about before, the ball movement on offense, the energy that they create, on both sides of the floor. We saw in that third quarter, they just strangled the Nets defensively. They just didn't allow anything easy for the Brooklyn Nets, and it's just movement all over the floor. They were going into box and ones on Kevin Durant or James Harden, even Patty Mills early in the fourth quarter. We saw they went into triangle and twos, and every player is locked in defensively and brings the energy defensively. And they're not necessarily great one-on-one defenders, but they know where they've got to be. And especially when you go into defensive schemes like that, like a box and one, where it's not one-on-one defense, where if I'm a coach and I just go and ask a player to go and guard that guy, that's not overly difficult to like lock in on that and just say, I've just got to guard this one guy kind of thing. When you're having different defensive schemes where you're zoning and whatnot, you've got to know where you have to be at all times. And that's not easy to do when you're not actually specifically guarding a man. And the Warriors did a great job of every player knowing where to be. And once they went to that, after the first quarter was basically, KD had 12 points, and there were situations where they just didn't want to switch. And so they were doubling on KD or doubling on Harden, and Bruce Brown's rolling, and he's by himself under the rim, and he's getting layups. Now, from a certain perspective, the Warriors live with that, and they say, well, if Bruce Brown wants to beat us, that's fine. But there's also situations where KD is just going into ISO plays against a specific matchup, and he's just beating them because that's who Kevin Durant is. He's probably the best ISO scorer of all time. I spoke about it on Monday. He's 7 foot with an incredible ball handle and an incredible jump shot. He's just impossible to stop. That's who Kevin Durant is. But then the Warriors go to different defensive schemes, box and ones, triangle and twos, and give them different looks. And all of a sudden, Kevin Durant might beat someone off the dribble, but then he's got someone else coming in from the side who's not really guarding a man, but he's in the zone and he's in the right place. Kevin Durant went 0 of 8 in the third quarter. And they were basically all jump shots. He never got to the rim once. He was trying... The only time I would say he got to the... Well, it wasn't even getting to the rim. It was like a floating banker that was way off. It just really was way off, and the Warriors got a dunk in transition through Jordan Poole. That was the only time where he got closest to the rim. Everything else was literally mid-range jumpers or three-point attempts, and every shot was well contested. And the Warriors, when they just lock in defensively, they can strangle opponents because there's no easy baskets. There's so many times in the NBA where there's stretches of play or there's certain possessions where NBA defenses, or just one player at least, falls asleep. And you can get a backdoor cut to the rim, you can get an easy lane to the rim, and it's just easy buckets. If the Warriors lock in defensively, you can go minutes after, you can go a whole quarter without getting any easy looks at the rim, without getting any easy baskets. And so you're having to work overtime and overtime to actually score the ball. And their third quarters this year are ridiculous right now. They're plus 124 in 14 third quarters, so it's basically nearly plus 10 every third quarter that they're playing, which is absolutely insane. I think the second highest might be plus 40 or plus 50 or something like that. So they're nearly like triple as good as every other team, as the second best team when it comes to third quarters. They're almost 3 times as good as the second best team in third quarters. Like, it is insane. And my reasoning for it is that the energy that they bring on both ends of the floor, it's actually a really taxing style of game, especially when you've got Steph Curry. Steph Curry's not this ISO guy who goes one-on-one with guys, like a Kevin Durant can, like a Giannis can, like a Harden can, because he's not built that way physically, just to overpower opponents and get whatever he wants one-on-one. Now, of course he can do it against big guys, and I actually thought I saw that a bit more today, because one of the weirdest things I saw from the Nets and Steve Nash's coaching was they didn't want to switch. Sorry, they switched everything, I should say. They switched everything, and there were so many times, even in the first quarter, and that's where you don't want things to start out, if Steph gets on a roll, is where his first couple of threes came over Blake Griffin, and Blake Griffin switched on to Steph. And then there's a possession in the third quarter where Blake's trying to chase Steph, and I'm just laughing. Like, you've got Blake Griffin chasing Steph Curry and trying to guard him. And the Warrior style of play is so energetic that I think it's just taxing to the opposition. And by the third quarter, they're just like, I think we've had enough of this. Like, I don't think we can keep up. And I think that's, like, it's a physically demanding style of game, because offensively, Steph's running around screens, and you're going to see it when Klay comes back, it's going to get even worse, where they're both running around screens, and it's not only those two guys, other blokes are setting screens, other blokes are cutting, like, everyone is moving. So every defender has to be chasing their man around for literally, if it goes a whole shot clock, it's 24 seconds. Like, that is physically demanding. And then on the other end of the floor, in the Warriors' defense, as I spoke about before, there's no easy baskets. So you're going to have to move around yourself and try and create ball movement. And if you can't do that, then you're relying on ISO plays. And that's what the Warriors want. They want tough contested mid-range jumpers from Kevin Durant. And tough contested jumpers from anyone, basically. And there's also an aspect of teams get so physically tired on defense that it just completely zaps their ball movement and their player movement on offense. They don't have the energy for it. So I think there's what we've seen this year in terms of the Warriors' third quarters is the perspective that, hey, some teams can keep up with them for the first half. And a lot of times the Warriors go into these games and the matchups are close at halftime and we look like we've got a game on our hands. And then they blow them out in the third quarter because their energy on both ends of the floor just completely zaps the opposition's energy. And they've got nothing left to give. And, I mean, Steve Nash threw in the towel with 9 minutes to go. He's like, hey, I've seen enough. We're down 26 or whatever it was. I've seen enough. I'm not going to bring KD and Harden back on the floor. And right now, the Warriors are the best team. But in saying that, there are teams that have the individual talent that can override the system that Steve Kerr is currently producing for the Warriors on offense and for defense. I just spoke about before, Steph Curry is not an ISO player necessarily, unless he gets switched onto a Blake Griffin or a LaMarcus Aldridge today kind of thing, which I saw on multiple occasions. He's not necessarily an ISO one-on-one guy. He's run around a bunch of screens and then get open eventually. And again, it's just physically taxing on the defense. Now, yes, he can go ISO at times, but we've seen when the Warriors get into hard matchups, their 2 losses this year have been very close. They're up 19 against Memphis, and then obviously a close game they lose in overtime, then the Hornets they lose by 4. And in both times, they almost get physically taxed to a level where they actually start relying on Steph ISOs. And in both those games, Steph hasn't delivered. He hasn't. And they've lost those games. But in all the other games, in most of their wins, they're just blowing teams out in the third quarter because their energy, as I said, their energy on both sides of the floor, the other team just doesn't want to bar of it. And the Warriors blow them out in the third quarter, end up getting up 20 points. And so they don't get into these close contests where they therefore have to rely on Steph ISOs. They don't. And so maybe that changes come playoff time because you're going to see closer games, more tougher defenses, and down the stretch you might have to rely on some Steph ISOs now and again, and we'll see if that can work for them. But right now their system is overriding anything else that the opposition has. And there are teams, and the Nets are one of them, with KD and Harden, and who knows what's happening with Kyrie. The Warriors have currently the favourite for MVP, one of the top 3 players in basketball right at this second. They have an all-time great defender, and then outside of that, they've got Klay Thompson, who at his best is an all-star, but we'll just wait and see what happens after 2 years off. They have Andrew Wiggins, who's a very good NBA player. I know his contract's not necessarily worth it, but he's a good NBA player. He's, a rung below kind of all-star level. They've got other role players who play their role to a really high level within the system, so that's great. But yeah, they're only, offensively at least, they've got a top 3 player, and that's really about it. They've got a bunch of blokes who know what they're doing, and some talented guys like Wiggins. Defensively, they've got Draymond. Wiggins is an above-average defender. Outside of that, they've got Iggy coming off the bench, Gary Payton II, who are very good defenders, but they're bench players at the end of the day. So this is not a team like they were in the Dynasty years where they've got Kevin Durant and it's like over for the rest of the league. They're just way too talented. No one even can compete with them. That's not it. It's system-based right now. And with the Nets, 2 top 10 players in Kevin Durant, and if James Harden can remain a top 10 player, which on his form at the moment he's probably not, but I think going into the season we would have said he's a top 10 player. 2 top 10 players, if they're at their best, and their role players are contributing, can beat the Golden State Warriors. They can, because of the talent. The individual talent overrides the system. Right now, that's not happening because James Harden's not playing like a top 10 player, and the Nets haven't worked out what they're doing necessarily with all their role players. Yes, Patty Mills has been okay. Aldridge has been good, but then didn't see time till the second half today, which I thought was a bit weird. We know Kyrie, if Kyrie comes back, then they've got 2 top 10 players and then a 3rd top 20 player. And in that instance, if that's a finals matchup, then I'd take the Nets to win. The Nets should win that matchup. But right now, the Warriors system is overriding every other teams in the league on most nights. Yes, they have lapses where they play against Charlotte and they play against Memphis, and I thought against Charlotte, they beat themselves. They beat themselves by missing shots. And they can also have nights where their ball movement style of play and the amount of passes they make or they attempt means there's a lot of turnovers. And again, they can beat themselves through that method. But right now, the team system basically is beating every other team. And there are teams like Brooklyn, the Lakers. If Anthony Davis can get to a top 10 player in the league and LeBron a top 3 player in the league, then again, the Lakers can beat the Warriors through individual talent. They can. They can just have more talent on the floor, and that can override the Warriors system. The Bucks are probably the other one where it's like Giannis is just too physically empowering for anyone else on the floor. And that's what we saw last year against the Suns, and they can do that again. They're probably the three teams. Other than that, I don't think anyone, the way the Warriors are playing right now, can actually beat them in a 7-game series. Because I don't think any other team has the individual talent to be able to override things. And I think the Warriors, if they're playing the system correctly and not beating themselves through turnovers, the way they lock in defensively, I just don't think anyone can beat that. I don't think they can. And you might be thinking I'm biased, but that's what I'm seeing right now. And the other thing is, the Warriors won by 18 today, and we know the Nets didn't play overly well. And we know KD shot 6 of 19 from the floor and had just 7 points after quarter time. Again, Warriors locked in defensively. It was the best quarter of basketball I've seen a team defend Kevin Durant in... Jeez, I can't remember. To be totally honest, it was incredible. And still, outside of Steph Curry, the Warriors only shot 4 of 26 from 3. They couldn't make a shot. I was watching the whole game. It was like everyone not named Steph couldn't make a shot from 3. And they were fairly good wide open looks. Jordan Poole goes 0 of 7. He's a 35% shooter. Otto Porter Jr., Nemanja Bjelica, up until the last 2 games, have been cash money from 3 the whole season. Up until the last 2 games. They've started to struggle a bit the last couple of games, whether that's a being on the road thing, because I think bench players and role players are a lot more suited in front of their home crowds. Like guys like Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, superstars of the league, they're going to play well wherever they are in America. But the role players, I think you'll find that they do play a lot better in their home building with their home fans in a way. So maybe that's why some of these bench players like Otto Porter, like Bjelica, may have struggled the last couple of games because they are finally on the road after that 8-game homestand. But yeah, it's basically the Warriors are the best team right now, and it's up to the Lakers and the chemistry with Westbrook, or even if they move off Westbrook, because I'm not sure Westbrook is even, I don't know what they're doing with him, to be totally honest. I think once LeBron comes back, I said it was my hot take in pre-season before the season started. I don't think we're going to see Russell Westbrook on the Lakers at the trade deadline. It's just me. Whether it's the Bucks, obviously, when they get fully healthy, whether it's the Nets, if Kyrie can come back, if James Harden can return to a top 10 team, there are teams that can beat them. And for that reason, I'm not saying the Warriors should be favourites for the NBA championship. But right now, they're the best team. Right now, they are. Now, the inclination is by playoff time, they won't be, because all of a sudden, James Harden is a top 10 player again. Maybe Kyrie Irving's decided to have a change of heart and get the vaccination, and he's back. Maybe it's Russell Westbrook is completely defied my belief and is actually working with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who are both top 10 players in the league. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's Giannis is firing on all cylinders, pushing Steph for MVP. Chris Middleton's back playing as well as ever. Maybe it's that. I don't know. But the Warriors look really good. The Nets are going to be a very good team as well, the way they're playing right now. But they need to be better if they want to beat this team in a 7-game series, if it's in the NBA Finals or whatever. So it's an exciting time for the league because we don't have these super teams, and it means that the teams that are well coached and have really good systems, like the Warriors with their ball movement on offense and their ability to lock in and just create havoc on defense, it means those teams can really compete and potentially win the NBA title over teams that are just too talented. They're just too talented. And we've seen that with the Warriors, obviously, through their dynasty years, where it's just Steph and like you look at the greatness of Steph Curry and KD so far this season, and it's just incredible that they're on the same team together. It's just no wonder it made it impossible for any other team to beat them, unless KD got injured, obviously. Klay Thompson went down, the Raptors beat us in 2019. But yeah, I think I've said it before, the NBA is in a great position, and this is going to be one of the more open NBA titles, I think, because there are a plethora of teams that can win it. I think those 4 that I've just mentioned, the Warriors, the Lakers, the Nets, and the Bucks, and maybe, who knows, maybe there's some massive trades at the trade deadline where Ben Simmons goes, may alter things a little bit. Who knows? It's a long NBA season. We're 14, not even 15 games in. We've got 65 odd to go. We're not even a quarter of the way through. But right now, Golden State Warriors, best team in basketball, and you can say that's me being biased. I don't think it is. I think it's what we're seeing right now. People may have questioned the schedule and the fact they had an 8-game homestand. They just beat the Brooklyn Nets with Kevin Durant and James Harden by 19 in their home building. So how much more can we question? And they've still got Clay and Wiseman to come back. So excited as a Warriors fan, but also from a neutral perspective, I think you've got to accept that at this second, if a playoff series was to start tomorrow, you would probably take them over every other team in the league. Let me know in the comments.